I wanted to compare the work permit system for international students in various countries. And this work permit, I want you to understand, are you allowed to work while you are studying as an international student in these countries I'm going to mention? And will you be given the work permit when you graduate your studies in those countries? I'm going to compare US, United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and other European countries, Australia, New Zealand. And in the end, I'll go to add something, and especially for those who want to go in a country and possible to live in those particular countries as permanent resident, and possible in the future you are thinking to become a citizen of that particular country. How are you going to make the decision? And especially, let's say you are going to get scholarships in 2 different countries, you have to make a decision. Or you are going to pay for studies in those countries, you want to make a decision to figure out which one is the better option or the best option regarding, like, okay, I want to spend this money, I want to study in that country, but possible I might stay there. I'm not so sure. I might stay there, or you know for sure I want to relocate in a particular country. So immigration regulations of the particular country in terms of the work permit during and after studies, and possible the adjustment of status to permanent residence of that country might help you to make that particular decision. So welcome everyone to this comparative discussion about the work permit for international students. It is me, EBM Ernest Boniface Makulilo, EBM, talking from my home office here in Belton, Missouri. I have 2 YouTube channels, youtube.com/EBMSCHOLARS and youtube.com/EBMSwahili. Those are YouTube channels. Please remember to subscribe them. I'll put on the link on the description on the video. You'll be able to see there. But also, I have 2 podcast accounts. I have EBM Scholars Podcast, which is an English podcast. I have a Swahili podcast, which is EBM Swahili Podcast. You can be able to get it there too on those particular areas. Okay, let me start. Almost all countries around the world, especially on the first world, international students are allowed to work. The difference usually is, where are you allowed to work? When are you allowed to work? How many hours are you allowed to work? In many African countries, international students are not allowed to work at all. So don't be upset with these regulations in other countries. If American student goes to study in Tanzania, is not allowed to work. You are a full-time student. Full stop. You're an exchange student, international students, doesn't matter. You're not allowed to work. But in Europe, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you'll be allowed to work. So, remember, when you go to study in those countries, that's why I tell people, if you are going as self-financing, you are going to pay for your own studies, don't plan your entire studies source of income that I'll be getting this one through job. Because some people say, oh, just give me your bank statement. Once I go there, I'll start working, I'll be able to pay for my school. No. You have to know the regulations in those countries. In all Western countries, international students, when the school is in session, not on summer holiday, not on Christmas break, when the school is open, you must be in school as a student. And you'll be allowed to work 20 hours per week. The difference might be from country to country. All countries will be 20 hours per week. In the US, it's very strict. International students is allowed to work on campus 20 hours per week, during the school year. When the school is in session, you are a full-time student. You didn't come up here to work. You apply for the visa as a full-time student, so you have to be focused on studying. Yes, you'll be able to work on part-time basis. 20 hours per week is maximum. If you have to work more than 20 hours, you have to get permission. And in the US, you have to work on campus. In most of European countries, you are allowed to work off campus. In the US, in order to work off campus, you are supposed to get a permit for that. You have to be authorized to work off campus. And your social security card, it will say, with authorization of the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. That means you're not allowed to work everywhere. Work on campus, 20 hours per week. But when school is closed, is in holiday, you'll be allowed to work to any employer, even off campus. Also in Europe, during the school year, you're allowed to work 20 hours. The difference will be some countries they might say work on campus, some countries they don't care, you can work off campus. Majority of the European countries, you are allowed to work off campus. When school is closed, you are allowed to work full-time to any employer, especially if it is in summer. So some people, they work during the school year, so they come with the school fees, they pay the school fees, they study. When summer comes, they work so hard to get more money to pay for the fees, and during the school year, they work 20 hours per week to be able to have the cost of living. Not to work part-time to get the tuition fees and living expenses. If you have a scholarship, you still allowed, you are given the opportunity if you want to work 20 hours per week, you will be allowed. In some countries, for instance in Germany, if you get the DAAD scholarship, you are allowed to work, it's part of having a scholarship, but if the amount of money is not exceeding 461 or 450 euro, if you get the income more than 450 euro, they will start deducting a certain amount of money from your scholarship. But in the US, it doesn't matter. Most of the scholarship, you are allowed to work. But then it goes to the next level. What about when you finish studying? What is the work authorization? But before that, to go there, but there are some people have children. There are some people are married, have wife, someone has wife or someone has a husband. What happens to those people? Are they also allowed to work during the school year or the school is closed if you are a dependent? Remember, when I say dependent, I mean your spouse and your children. Dependent is not your father, it's not your grandfather, it's not your uncle. That is not dependent. So you need to know those kind of distinctions. So in Europe, some scholarship, they allow you to get extra stipend for your spouse if you have a family. But most of the scholarship, they don't give extra money for that. And most countries don't allow your spouse to work, whether part-time, whether full-time. There are some people, their spouse, they work, which is not allowed. It's against the immigration. If you get caught, you'll be deported. As I said, you are supposed to work on campus in the US. If you work full-time, if you get caught, you'll be deported. And so many people have been deported. So you need to come here with the mindset and the budget of knowing what are the regulations for you as international students and what are the repercussions if you go against those regulations. Don't start hating, oh, this president is racist while you are breaking the immigration law. The immigration law has been there before Biden, before Trump, before Barack Obama, before Bush, before Clinton. These regulations have been there. So, for the dependent, obviously, if you have children, you will be allowed to study. And in most of these countries, education is free from kindergarten to high school. You go to Canada, the same. US, the same. Most of European countries, the same. So, some European countries, they have even PhD, from kindergarten to PhD for free. So if you have a child, you will study there. But your husband or your wife, if your main student is the wife or the main student is the student is the husband, your wife or your husband, who is your dependent, in the US, is not allowed to work. In many European countries, they're not allowed to work. But in Canada, your spouse is allowed to work full-time, is given the work permit to be allowed to work. So it's up to you, when you consider all those factors, if you are married, where will be the best option for you? Let's say US or Canada. For me, I will tell you Canada. Why? Because your wife will be allowed to be working full-time, or your husband will be allowed to work full-time. There are some kids, they have a certain bike, it is summer, so they're just riding across from the end of the street coming to the end of the street. So they are having fun, so don't worry about the noise. So that is regulations. In some countries, they might allow with the permission. In the US, you have to get permission for that, I think. In some of the European countries, they might allow also your spouse to work, but also part-time. So depending. So you have to look at the immigration regulations before you go to these countries, and especially the work permit if you have the dependent. And if the other last part to consider, what is the regulations for the work permit post-work studies? If you finish your studies, are you allowed to work even for a year or 2 years? What are the regulations? So in Europe, most of the countries are allowed to work at least a year to get work experience, but you must get a company to sponsor you. In the United Kingdom, it used to be the same way. You must get a job from a company to sponsor you to get a work permit. But now, on July 1st, 2021, the United Kingdom has passed the new immigration route system to the international students. So if you go as international students, you'll be given the work permit, so you don't need to get a job first or to get a person to sponsor you that I'm promised to give you a job. You'll be given, if you finish your master's, you'll be given 2 years work permit. If you finish bachelor or master's, you get 2 years of work permit. If you finish doctorate, you get 3 years of work permit. Then from there, you can use application towards going to get the permanent residence under the merit or point-based system which United Kingdom has. In the US, after studies, you get OPT, optional practical training, 1 year for most of the social science programs, and 1.5 years, which is 18 months for science and technology programs, STEM. And if you go to Canada, if your bachelor is 3 years or 4 years, you'll be given 4 years. So the work permit after studies is equal to the number of years you studied. In the number of years, I don't say that you go, the program is 2 years and you are going to repeat the year, no. If the program is 2 years, you'll be given 2 years of work permit. If the program is 4 years, you'll be given 4 years work permit. If the program is 3 years, you'll be given 3 years work permit. And also Canada has better chances or merit-based immigration system, point-based system, and a lot of immigration route for you to become permanent resident in Canada. The same to Australia and New Zealand. If you finish, you get work permit, but they have also a merit-based point system for you to transition, to adjust to become a permanent resident. So in that particular case, with the new immigration system of United Kingdom for international students, it is a good way to go to England, but it's the best to go to Canada. It is the best to go to Australia. It is the best to go to New Zealand. It is not good to come to US. It is not good to go to Europe because there is no guarantee to have more years of work experience. 1 year work experience is a very short time, because to get a very good job, professional good job, you might suffer for 90 days or 6 months, sometimes to get a very good job. So after that, 1 year can go so fast. But if you have 3 years work permit, you can have a very good work permit and work experience, which can add your value to that particular country under the merit-based immigration to apply to become a permanent resident of that particular country. Because merit-based immigration, with your education you have, plus education from that country, work experience from your country, and the work experience in that particular country, with your age, with the language, with the other skills, give you a lot of chances to become a very competitive person to be given the permanent residence of that particular country. So think about those countries before you go. The work permit while you were a student, the work permit for your spouse if you are married, the work permit post-studies, and the possibility of you adjusting to become a permanent resident of that particular country. Those will be the things to consider, whether you go to scholarships, whether you go as a self-financing student in those countries. Thank you. Thank you so much. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/EBMSCHOLARS and youtube.com/EBMSwahili, for you to learn more with opportunities, other opportunities which are available to these countries. Thank you and goodbye.